This is the Committee on Academic Workforce and Success. We want to remind you that we are on the internet today, and if you'll please, yes it is, you may need to turn up the volume a little bit.
Silence my phone.
Remind you to silence your phones. Thank you. As most of you know, McGregor Stevenson has accepted a position at the governor's office. Stacy Silverman has been named as the interim assistant commissioner for the Workforce, Academic Affairs and Research Division. Stacy will be discussing some of the items on our agenda today. Oh, we're ready? Oh, we want to do that? Yeah. Item number 2 is consideration of approval of the minutes for the December 12th meeting of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. Was there any questions or discussion?
Assume. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on, agenda item 3, consideration of approval of the consent calendar for the Committee on Academic Workforce Success. We have 5 items today. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
And seconded for D, E, G, K, and L.
Very good. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The motion passes. We do have a guest here today, and we'd like to talk about an impact statement. And since, Dr. Shine, you're the only public member to speak, is now a good time for us to look at the impact statement. So, I'll give it over to Stacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first impact statement, which is included in your board materials, we've actually just provided you with a new revision. The revised version is in color and is at each of your places. Dr. Shine, would you like a version of this as well? This impact statement is related to Senate Bill 24, which proposes to merge 2 existing University of Texas component institutions, the University of Texas Pan American and the University of Texas Brownsville, into a new institution, and would include a medical school that would build on the existing efforts in the region.
David.
Since the board authorized the transmittal of the impact statement, additional information was provided by the UT system and changes have been incorporated. And those changes are reflected in both the highlights, those in yellow, and then in blue are what were added today based on some additional information. And I'll let Dr. Shine take it from here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to President Roberts, Americans with us.
Certainly, you want to join him at the table. Is your microphone on, Dr. Shine?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
Pull it closer.
Testing 1, 2, 3, testing.
Thank you.
First, thank you for allowing me to make some comments, and I do want to express our appreciation to Dr. Silverman and her staff as we worked on this impact statement. This is a complicated set of issues. I just want to communicate to the committee, how excited the University of Texas is about the creation of this new university in South Texas. We think this, beside any issues of economies of scale, that there's an opportunity to do some extraordinary things in South Texas in both the academic campuses and with the involvement of a medical school. The medical school component of it is somewhat unique in that we anticipate that this would be a medical school which would very much a regional medical school. That is, we already have facilities in Harlingen, 2 buildings there, a research building in Edinburgh and Hidalgo County. We have a facility at Brownsville in public health, and it's likely that there will be other facilities going forward. The concept behind this medical school is to, and to a certain extent the university, is to make maximum use of online education, of technology in education, and a major focus in small class education. That is, we are designing this so that students can meet in groups of anywhere from 10 to 12, and that those students can include not only medical students, but nursing students, physicians' assistants, and a number of the other health professionals that are educated in South Texas. And by doing this regional approach, we take advantage of about $80 million of facilities. We take advantage of the fact that different programs are located in different places. We are investing in a simulation hospital, which is not only in Harlingen, but also in these other areas. Just a couple of comments that I would like to make specifically about the medical school. The current funding of the Regional Academic Health Center is $10.2 million a year. The regions have committed $10 million a year for 10 years, or $100 million, toward this medical school, and that's allowed us to begin the actual planning of this medical school, including the potential for recruitment of a dean. In addition, there is a legislative appropriation request for an additional $10 million a year at San Antonio, which would, if funded, bring the total to $30 million per year for the initial stages of the medical school. The material that you have talks about accreditation taking a minimum of 5 years, but it should be clear that the first students matriculate far before the 5 years. The 5 years is based on the final accreditation doesn't take place until you graduate your first class. So, in fact, we've been working with the LCME, and if everything worked, we could conceivably matriculate a class as early as 2016. But that class obviously wouldn't graduate until 2019 or 2020. We do have in our institutions a program called Transformation in Medical Education that allows undergraduates to become involved in a medical career early on, and we have the potential for students to ultimately get degrees in 6 or 7 as well as 8 years, and Pan Am and Brownsville are involved in those activities to a significant extent. Dr. Silverman has made reference to the residency issue. Residencies are extremely important since we want these students to be able to take their residencies locally, and we have firm commitments for 150 new residency positions in addition to the programs that already exist there, and the hospitals have come up with resources. We are contributing to that using the 1115 waiver, and we're using our own intergovernmental transfer money to fund some of that, but the hospitals have agreed that they will proceed. One of the reasons why it's possible to happen is that many of these hospitals have no residency programs at present. And a hospital that has no residency program is eligible for Medicare support of their residency programs. So if we can jumpstart these programs and get them through the first couple of years, they can retroactively get money from Medicare for those residents. That's one of the reasons why the hospitals in this case are quite interested in the possibilities. And the final point I'd make is that we see this as a wonderful synergism between a medical school and these these academic campuses, which will be part of the same institution. We believe that an investment in research, for example, will be synergized between the medical school and the academic campuses. As indicated in the paper that you've seen, we already have identified diabetes as an area of major commitment, and we've committed 8 FTEs and $7.5 million from our Lower Rio Grande Valley initiative to move the agenda in diabetes. But we see this as one of only a number of opportunities to help the academic campus join with the medical campus in creating a university of the first class in South Texas. Perhaps I could turn to President Nelson, and then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Most mergers are about contraction. This is not about contraction. This is about access and success. This is about growth. In the Rio Grande Valley, every 2 months we open up two new elementary schools and 1 new middle school. We need to educate those kids. To be able to educate them, we have to grow and provide the education they need. The Valley is 93% Hispanic. My university has 19,302 students. 89% of them are Hispanic. We have been very good at educating them. If you go to Austin and UT Austin and you want to go to medical school, you have a 32% chance. If you come to Pan Am, you have a 64% chance. because of the articulation agreements that we've got. We have a chance now to make ourselves into a bicultural emerging research university. We will work with applied research in that field, but we will always be about making a healthier South Texas, and that's what the medical school is about, and a better educated South Texas with more jobs available for our students. And as I said, there's 1.5 million people in the Valley right now. Average age is 25.9.
I appreciate that in the impact study, the staff has clearly indicated the enormous shortage of health professionals in this area. I mean, it is I've been spending a lot of time in South Texas over the last 2 years as we worked on this project, and it is remarkable how short the area is, and we think that this is going to be a major help in terms of not only providing opportunities, but a workforce.
So this is quite exciting news, and congratulations to both of you and the institutions you represent. Dr. Shine, did I understand you saying that hospitals that don't currently have GME, that bring on GME, are eligible for new Medicare dollars to draw down?
That is correct, sir.
So even though the formula is frozen,
the cap
at its current level, you can actually access that?
Yes, sir. An institution which has no programs whatsoever can, under the new rules, over a 5-year period, add additional programs. So in the case of, let's say, Doctors Hospital Renaissance, they're going to be adding programs in internal medicine, OBGYN, in family medicine, and in surgery. As long as they're within that 5-year period, they could also add pediatrics or something else and be eligible for Medicare reimbursement.
Well, that's got to be our model then for new GME, I would think, across the state, because you've been a part of these discussions. We've been looking at a need to grow our GME. Clearly, the frozen Medicare formula is a problem in the facilities that currently have those programs, that you can't expand and expect new Medicare dollars. But what you're telling me is new information, that there are additional Medicare dollars as long as you're a hospital that doesn't currently have GME.
Dr. Teicher, you're absolutely on target. We've just begun a program at Good Shepherd in Longview with 54 residents. They are going to get Medicare support. The chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Tommy Williams, asked me to put together a proposal which is now working its way through the Senate, and it's being echoed in the House. And part of that proposal is to provide grants of $150,000 to a hospital which does not have any residency programs as a planning grant. These are hospitals that don't know anything about these programs. And again, I've been struggling in South Texas with some of those new institutions, in the sense that we have to provide consultation, and they need to hire somebody to help them put together the proposal. So both the House and the Senate have provisions in their GME legislation at the moment that would provide planning grants for such hospitals. There also is the intention, although this is not yet explicit in the rules, that such hospitals might get as much as $35,000 per resident when they start these new programs. That figure is based on the fact that Medicare will pay $75,000 to $100,000 for a resident in a new program. So between what the state would provide and what Medicare would provide, you could fully fund a new resident position. At the same time, both the House and the Senate have provisions for additional residency programs in existing programs, but as you say, the funding is much more challenging because you can't get Medicare money for it.
And of the 150 new positions that you're talking about adding in the Valley, are those first-year positions or total throughout the entire postgraduate experience?
Sir, I want to be clear. It's 115 new positions. There are 33 existing positions. That's how you get to 148.
Okay.
And that's total. The situation is, however, that since a substantial number of those are in family medicine, internal medicine, and so forth, the number of first-year positions comes out to about 40, 42. So if you're talking about a medical school with 50 students, already we would be in a position to offer first-year positions of perhaps 40 to 45. But I would emphasize that we're still talking about pediatrics. We're still looking at additional programs there, It's just that each of them takes a great deal of planning and consultation and so forth going forward.
Have your counterparts at the A&M, Texas Tech System, are they aware of this opportunity to start new GME and get Medicare funding? Is that a discussion that we've had amongst the various systems? Because this is the first time I've heard of it, and it's very exciting.
Well, I testified before the House committee, and there were representatives of all of the institutions there, and Chairman Colcost, who was in there, picked up on it exactly the same way that you did and pointed out that that was not general knowledge. So I'm quite clear that the other institutions which were at that meeting, we certainly gave them plenty of reason to want to take a look at it. Don't misunderstand me. It's not necessarily easy to start these programs. There are about 500 hospitals in Texas. Only 57 of them have a residency program, and 15 of them account for the vast majority of the residents. So starting one of these programs is potentially expensive. There's the whole question of what the relationship is between them and the medical school, so that you have all of those kinds of issues. What's the patient population? Do you have enough mix of patients so that these are not easy things to do for many institutions, but certainly we're trying to stimulate interest in the area, and our experience so far has been pretty good.
Congratulations.
I'd like to ask a question. So, the potential and the opportunities, as you see it, in terms of establishing postgraduate residency programs are out there. It's just a matter of us having the resources necessary to fund the startup programs, to start them up, to have the necessary time to plan them, put them in place. But if you've got 57% of the hospitals now participating, that's a large number.
No, 57 hospitals out of 500.
Yeah, out of 500. So it's a small number that are participating. So what that tells me is that there's a large number of hospitals that are not participating. So that appears to me to be a real good opportunity to engage those hospitals, particularly those that would be excellent clinical teaching opportunities for our students. I'm sure some of them are probably located in areas where there's even some substantial amount of Medicare money that can be paid for underserved areas. They'll give you a stipend every quarter, I think, if you're if you've got these physicians practicing in underserved areas. So if you've got 57 out of what was the number?
It's close to 500.
Yeah, that's a tremendous amount of hospitals that, perhaps if we approach them and show it where it's a win-win for everybody, then we can grow. We got the potential to grow these to meet our needs in the future.
Sir, we've been in collaboration with the Texas Hospital Association, the teaching hospitals of Texas. I've been working very closely with them as I put together the proposals in the legislature, including the startup grants, including money for the institutions. I would emphasize to you, again, there are lots of complexities. There are many small rural hospitals which could possibly participate in something that was a rotation, but clearly aren't going to be able to stand up a program of its own. If you do family medicine, for example, you must have a substantial continuity clinic in which the family physician trainees can see their patients over time. That's an investment. If you're a for-profit hospital, frankly, the relatively small number of residents being taught in for-profit hospitals because it's not a terribly profitable activity. So, again, we're actively working to try to do what you're suggesting, but it is not a slam dunk. I mean, it's not a trivial undertaking to get hospitals to take on these responsibilities.
I'm familiar with Good Shepherd in Longview, and I'm also familiar with East Texas Medical Center, which is probably the predominating network of regional hospitals in East Texas, and as I understand, it's nonprofit. So,
we would be delighted if Trinity Mother Francis and East Texas Medical Center, and we have had conversations with them, sir.
Well, there's a lot of us that in that area that and business leaders that might could help facilitate
I
that.
think that the conversation with the business community could be very useful.
Well, let me know, for one, if there's anything I can help, because
Well, but that's
we desperately love to have y'all's presence.
Well, we
in East
thought that when we
Texas.
did the program at Longview, that the hospitals in Tyler would
You know
come
what,
up to it, but
I would
they have not
guessed-
so far.
Well, you know what? We may need to pick up a phone calls. Some of the right people, contacting the right people that are in East Texas that are on those boards may want to kind of come alongside you and guys and kind of help you guys some.
We're
If
wide
we
open.
can.
We're
If we
very
can.
interested.
Do we have any other discussion? And we do need to vote on this, don't we? This impact statement is the recommendation of the commissioner. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the courtesy of allowing us to go first.
You want to take the other state? Was there a second one? Yes. Do you want to do that one now? Yes. While we're on it. Is there someone here to speak on it, or?
Tyler?
Okay.
February 22nd, and this create a new institution, which would break away from the Texas Tech.
I've read it.
The board recommends the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center at El Paso be established. Is not currently seeking funding. The establishment and maintenance would require additional state support beginning with the 2016-17 biennium. And again, El Paso has been preparing for this for quite a long time, and it seems a reasonable thing to do. I don't believe anyone is here from Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center to talk on this.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
just being from El Paso, I do know that this is one of the top priorities of the Texas Tech system. The city of El Paso is in full support. Actually, I think the entire system is looking forward to this occurring.
Question, this is just another step in a long-range plan. This has been planned for quite some time, so.
That's correct,
This
yes.
is not a surprise.
Not at all.
Are we just required to issue this impact statement?
Yes.
Okay, I move approval.
We've lost our quorum.
Hey, Dennis, say second, please. Second. Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It passes. Thank you. This was for Senate Bill 120.
Yes.
Thank you. And the third one?
Is actually Senate Bill 566, which would establish a new School of Pharmacy at UT Tyler. This is a unique and innovative approach to a new school in that it would not have formula funding. It would not seek formula funding at all. However, that would increase the cost to the student and on page 4 of the analysis that's provided for you, it would increase the proposed tuition would be $32,000 a year. This bill was actually heard this morning in committee and voted out favorably. So, have information in your packets, and I'm happy to address any questions.
It's an interesting concept for, I just want to thank the staff, Stacy and her staff, who got this out to us in a matter of hours yesterday. Exceptional work. Thank you. Are there any questions about the pharmacy school in Tyler?
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Chris Fowler and Elizabeth Mayer and James Goman for their fabulous work on this. They really worked
Herculean. It was really.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see. We are at agenda item 5A, adopting the staff recommendation relating to the single statewide college readiness standard for the new TSI assessment. We have a presentation.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I'd like to bring up to the dais Dr. Aaron Grachek, the Director of Assessment, along with the College Board staff that are here, Chantel Reynolds, and I think there's, and then Dr. Suzanne Morales-Vale, our Director of Developmental Education in ABE. After quite a number of months of hard and long work, we are now at the point of bringing the recommendation to you on the new TSI, the Texas Success Initiative, and I'm going to let Dr. Grachek begin. It will be a three-part presentation.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Grachek. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the TSI Assessment here at the Coordinating Board. The purpose of this agenda item is to approve recommended standards, or cut scores is a term that you'll see throughout this presentation, on the new TSI assessment. We have other Coordinating Board staff present, as well as College Board staff here to speak to the test development process. Over the past few years, there's been a statewide commitment toward developmental education reform. Texas legislation in 2011, with HB 1244, approved the adoption of a single TSI assessment. The Coordinating Board approved a no-cost contract to the College Board to develop this assessment, and there's been a collaborative process across stakeholders and institutions toward this goal. For example, in your packet, we provided you with a list of institutions who were represented during important development meetings. Currently, there are multiple tests which are not well aligned with our college and career readiness standards that can be used currently to determine readiness. The Coordinating Board approved the adoption of the cut scores on the currently used test to be effective back in December 3rd, 2003. In addition, institutions have the option to raise the cut scores on any of these tests. So in other words, students may be considered college ready by one institution, but not considered ready by another institution based on the same test result. This new TSI assessment is the first of its kind in this nation. This is a computer adaptive assessment aligned to our Texas College and Career Readiness Standards. It tailors its questions presented to individual students based on their skill level. The assessment categorizes students as either college ready, developmental education, or adult basic education. Those who have college ready skill sets are those that have the knowledge and skills necessary to succeed in entry-level community college and university courses. Those with developmental education skill sets are those that you typically find in high school, grades 9 through 12. And those with adult basic education skill sets are those you would be below 9th grade. For those who are not college ready, further diagnostic information is provided such that instruction and support can be tailored to each student. This information is provided across a broad range of skill sets from grade level 0 all the way through 12th grade. In addition, it's provided to institutions at a low cost. Among all students who are first-time in-college students, the majority are exempt from taking this TSI assessment. In the box below those circles are some exemptions in rural and are currently in place. Students have the opportunity to be exempt by demonstrating that they're ready on other types of assessments like the ACT and SAT. Also, students who are not seeking a degree or certificate would not need to take this test. That said, there are many students not ready to succeed in post-secondary education. If we look at the big circle in the center, we find that more than 8 in 10 students requiring developmental education attend our two-year institutions. If we look at the small circle on the left, over half of the students entering two-year colleges require developmental education. while the circle on the right shows a smaller proportion entering universities require this type of instruction. These students need supports tailored to their skill levels, and the new TSI assessment will provide diagnostic information such that institutions can provide these supports. I'll now turn the microphone over to Chantel Reynolds from the College Board, who will speak to the test development process.
Good afternoon. Am I on? Thank you very much. Are we good now? Thank you. Again, my name is Chantel Reynolds. I'm with the College Board. I serve as the project manager for this particular initiative, and that puts me in the unique role and an enjoyable role of being the primary liaison between the coordinating board and the College Board, and then also institutions of higher education. I spend a lot of time working directly with your institutions as they have questions and want to move towards implementation. So I'm spending a lot of time in Austin these days. To emphasize, when the College Board was awarded the contract, the very first step was an analysis of the college and career readiness standards and where our instrument at that time stood in relationship to that standards. AccuPlacer is one of the currently approved assessments for TSI purposes, but like all of the currently approved assessments, not quite there in terms of a match with the college and career readiness standards. And so the first component of our being awarded the contract was to evaluate those standards, conduct a gap analysis, and find out where we stood. And then in bringing that information forward, we had several conference calls with key faculty and staff from around the state, and then had a formal meeting, kind of a final test design formal kickoff meeting in May of last year to really look at the results of the gap analysis, sit with those faculty, and get their feedback for what we were proposing. And we left that meeting with a basic blueprint for what the TSI, how it would be constructed, what it would be covering. Once we left with that blueprint, that really kicked off the item development and the field testing process, and that's a very involved process of literally writing items and then putting them out for students to test for us to see if the item performs the way we expect it should. That kicked off in the summer of last year. It is ongoing for some of the ABE components, and it's just simply a matter of you get students to take the test and get there and see how they perform on the test. One of the key components was also an item review, where you bring the results of the field test to date, you bring them forward to faculty to take a look at how items are performing. The vast majority perform the way you think they will, and then you have some that do, there's a gray area. They do okay maybe on one element, but not in another, and we want feedback and discussion and judgment calls from a lot of these same faculty to say, do we keep that item or do we move forward without it? So that was an early January process. Then we move into a standard setting, and my colleague Dina Morgan will talk more about what was involved in standard setting, but it's essentially the point where the faculty, again, make recommendations as to the final cut scores for placing into English 1301 and Math 1314, and really put forward that recommendation for consideration. We've had some initial internal meetings over these recommendations and potential impact data. Obviously, we're here before you today, and then we will go before the full board at the end of April to really, again, put this information out there and hopefully have everyone feeling good about going forward with those recommendations. Thank you, Erin. One of the things that was very important to all of us from the beginning is that we made sure that faculty and institutions felt like they were very much involved in this process. As with any type of launch of a new assessment, there's always going to be an element of, I wasn't asked, I wasn't included, nobody asked me, nobody told me. There's always a little bit of that. So it was a very deliberate effort to make sure that every institution, every higher education institution in this state was offered an opportunity in some way to participate in the item review or standard setting process. And there were over 250 faculty nominations received from institutions. And the coordinating board, as you can see there, really made sure that the final group, the final team, were very representative, again, of those institutions, not just in the traditional gender and ethnicity categories, but also their knowledge of the standards, the geographic location of their institution, the size of that institution. Do they have K-12 experience? Do they have DevEd experience? All of that was in the mix for defining who eventually would be on this final team. And I will say that the facilitators that we brought in for the standard setting on more than one moment did comment on the quality of the faculty and how representative a group it really was. And so they did pass on compliments in that regard to the state for really thinking that through. What I'd like to do now is turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Dina Morgan, to talk a little bit about the standard setting process and lead us through those faculty recommendations, and then the coordinating board staff will take back over again.
Hi. I was in charge of running the standard setting, and what we did is we convened approximately 70 faculty members from across the state. It included both higher ed faculty and some representatives from secondary education as well. And we conducted what is a bookmark standard setting. And the really key piece about the bookmark standard setting is that it requires the faculty to actually go through actual test items one at a time and think about what students must know and be able to do to answer that item correctly. And so as they're reviewing that information on an item-by-item basis, and then also as part of that, they develop performance level descriptors, which describe what students need to know and be able to do to be placed into each one of those categories. And so they look at how what the items are measuring and what those definitions are requiring match up. And that becomes a recommendation that each one makes for the location of the cut score. And then to get the actual cut score, we aggregate across all the faculty that were in that panel. Because we have 3 categories of student placement, adult basic education, developmental education, and college ready, it required us to set 2 cut scores. In terms of college ready, we have a score scale that goes from 310 to 390. And on that score scale, the recommendations of the faculty were that for mathematics, a cut score of 369 would be used for the college ready cut score, a cut score of 359 for reading, and then an essay score of 5, or if you have an essay score of 4 but a multiple choice score of 363, then you would be college ready in writing. And so when we take that information from the faculty recommendations and apply it to distributions of student performance based on similar assessments, we're able to project what we believe will be the impact of these cut scores. And so first realize that we have approximately 42% of the people who would actually take this assessment. Other people are being exempted through other means. So out of that 42%, we would expect in math about 3% to be college ready on the new assessment, 48% in developmental ed, and then 49% for adult basic education. When we move to reading, we have 39% who would be taking the assessment. And then out of that 39%, we would expect 25% of that to be college ready in reading, 41% in developmental ed, and 34% in the adult basic ed. And then finally, when we look at writing, we have about 38% of students who would need to take the assessment, and out of that 38, about half of those, 51%, would be considered college ready in writing based on our projections that we have to this point. And so now I'll turn it back over to Aaron.
Thanks, Dina. Again, this is Aaron Grochik at the... Thank you. This is Aaron Grochik at the coordinating board. So this slide speaks to the recommendation that the staff is proposing for you to consider. Based on the projected impact of the mathematics and reading cut scores, we recommend a phase-in of these cut scores. The phase-in will allow an appropriate timeline for adjustment to the final standards recommended by the Texas faculty. In the next set of slides, I'll show you the impact of this phase-in. Considering all first-time in college students, this represents the projected impact of the mathematics cut scores on the new TSI assessment. If we look at the yellow portion on the right, as you recall, this represents 58% who are exempt from taking the test and can enroll directly into a credit-bearing course. The bottom row indicates our current standard. In other words, of all first-time in college students, currently 42% are not exempt. 10% are not exempt but meet the college readiness standards on one of the current TSI assessments, while 32% are in need of developmental education. In the next row up reflects our first phase-in of the recommended cut scores. We see how the non-exempt proportion breaks down, where the blue portion represents those who have knowledge and skill levels below high school levels. The red-orange represents the students at high school levels, and the green reflects those who are college ready. The recommended phase-in schedule allows for institutions to adjust over time. It's difficult to project far into the future as our standards continue to be embedded into programs and instruction continues to improve over time. We would expect more students entering college who would be ready. We'll be monitoring the impact of the new assessment every year to determine if adjustments need to be made. Here's the projected impact of the reading cut scores.
I have a question. So, okay, you're going to do all three, but what you're saying is, as you phase this in, you would expect the 21% that are even below developmental education, would they be then not allowed? They would be, what would you do with those students?
Let me address that. One thing that we have in this exam is something we haven't had before. It's the ability to identify those students who really are not yet ready for developmental ed. And however, a few of those might actually be. So you'll learn later that there's going to be some, beyond the score, some actual assessment to see if some of these adult basic ed students are really closer to being college ready than the score alone would suggest. But we're going to propose to you at an April meeting a specific plan for how to address ABE in the first year, because this is totally new. We've never been able to assess this group before, and potentially have a one-year phase-in period in the adult basic ed. Many of these students have been addressed within developmental ed currently at many community colleges. We don't believe we just want to put them on the street. We need to find some way to address their needs. And so we need a specific proposal for you on that, and we'll have at the beginning of that in April what we plan to suggest we do the first year, and then by the end of that year, something more concrete. And we're really, to my knowledge, the first state that's really being able to separate these students out. So there's a little bit of a learning period here.
Well, I find this, and I may be jumping ahead, but we do know that there's a shakeout even in developmental ed. The students that never even get through that. And so what you're doing here is identifying them up front, basically.
That's exactly right, because we haven't known the extent of the presence of these students. We've been fearful that there are students who weren't getting the type of instruction they needed. By the end of this process, certainly at the end of the year, we'll be in a place to specifically identify their needs. At least in the beginning, we'll know that their needs are greater than we would have realized. In the past, whatever exam you used, there was a floor. And at the bottom of that floor, you didn't know if you were still a couple of years from being college ready or if you were 4 or 5 years. Okay. So this is an important departure. And in fact, to some extent, we may be doing a little bit better with developmental ed than we thought, because it appears we have more ABE students embedded in it than we would have thought previously.
I think the other point to be made, too, is when you look at the number who do not have to take this test. Right. And so that also, and the other work that we have done over the last 2 years that Dr. Morales-Vail took on over a year ago, the implementation of our demonstration sites and looking at those 5 major components of developmental education, from assessment all the way through to professional development. She's going to be speaking to this. So the cut scores and the placement of students also has a very different focus than we have in the past. So there's some real positive impact. And I think what Dr. Grachek said, being the first of its kind in the nation, it is a learning curve, but it certainly has opened our eyes to those percentages in the middle. And what do we need to do to help the community colleges where this population resides?
This is real surprising to me. So thank you. Continue. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So this slide speaks to the projected reading impact. Again, we recommend a phase-in schedule, which would allow institutions to adjust as we monitor the impact of the assessment every year. And here's the impact of the writing scores. Now, we don't anticipate a need to phase in this recommended readiness standard at this time, but we would monitor it at implementation. Now, the purpose of this slide is to focus on the student population. Students who come directly from high school may have different skill sets than those who do not come directly from high school. Students at two-year colleges may have different sets of needs in general than students at four-year institutions. Also, we need to identify our ABE population so we can better provide them with what they need. Now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Dr. Morales-Vail to speak to advising and placement of students.
Hi, Dr. Morales-Vail, Coordinating Board Director of Developmental and Adult Education. As you're aware, both state and national reform efforts focus on accelerating this population of underprepared students as identified with this improved TSI assessment through developmental coursework and interventions to transfers, certificate, and degree completions. These reform efforts move students away from traditional 16-week courses into flexible and individualized options that address students' weak areas while considering their strengths. This new assessment plays a key role in addressing differentiated placement and instruction as required in House Bill 1244 of the 82nd Legislature. We are proposing to amend TSI rules to include factors in addition to the standard cut score as is current practice when determining the best placement for students. As Dr. Gratchik discussed earlier, the new assessment will provide a diagnostic profile available immediately upon completion of the test. In addition to a scale score, this profile will provide a red, yellow, and green visual snapshot of the student's specific strengths and weaknesses in 4 key strand areas per subject area. Institutions will be asked to consider additional factors such as including high school GPA, class ranking, prior coursework, non-cognitive factors such as levels of motivation, and considering family life issues that often act as barriers and obstacles for students' persistence and course completion. So you may have 2 students with exactly the same cut scores, but with very different recommendations for the best intervention to accelerate them through successful completions. We believe one of our most important roles here at the Coordinating Board is to keep faculty, staff, and administrators informed as best as possible to the status of the new TSI assessment and other developmental education reform efforts. To that end, we have partnered with Austin Community College to hold monthly informational webinars on various topics. The best part is the Q&A session at the end of each of these presentations. We learn just as much from the field as they do from us. Based on feedback from the field, these are very popular, and I'm often thanked by folks in the field that we have provided them with this important resource. The next webinar, by the way, is scheduled for tomorrow from 1 to 3 o'clock, and the topic is the new TSI assessment. In addition, starting this past February and continuing through August, Chantel Reynolds, who spoke earlier, of the College Board, has been holding weekly day-long training sessions for TSI administrators. As we get closer to the implementation date, College Board consultants will be working with each individual institution to ensure a seamless transition to the implementation of the new assessment. We also continue to present at various conferences and forums held all across the state, as well as send memorandum updates to leadership at each institution. Aaron?
I'd like to. Now I'd like to turn it to Dr. Judith Laredo to speak to the recommendation.
It was presented. Pardon me. Madam Chair, as was presented a moment ago, the slide before you represents again the phase-in process and the cut score for each of the areas as presented, and that is our recommendation that we bring forth to you today.
Discussion. The scores really don't mean a lot to me because I'm not sure what you're measuring. Are these, SAT scores, or but I would assume that when I see the list on the next page of colleges, and those were all participants in this, and there was a general consensus that this was the best plan.
After the standard setting process, I think we were probably quite surprised because, we were there as spectators. We didn't participate, but we as staff were in each of the areas watching the process as it rolled out. And at the end, faculty came up to us and thanked us for the thorough process. They were skeptical at first because they had not ever gone through a process like this, but felt that once they had seen it roll out, that it really was a very sound process, and we're very glad to have been a part of it. It was amazing in one of the sessions that I sat in on, where the discussion was the difference between the DevEd side and the regular faculty when they were saying, do you understand that this is what students have to be able to do? And their discussion was very deep on the subject, and they literally took this test item by item. And it wasn't easy. In fact, some of those sessions went a lot longer because they were taking it so seriously. So I personally feel, after the observation and the comments made, I even came back and told Dr. Gardner, one of the faculty members said he had become closer to that team than he was to his own faculty members after having, necessary to make such critical decisions about the lives of kids.
Was there any concern about the possibility of decreased enrollment based on this being a filter, or perhaps even the good side would be increased graduation rates?
No, what there was concern about is, are you going to address when you separate these students out? And at that point, all we could say, yes, that is our intent. But they did ask that question. It was asked more than once. Sure. The other part was, of course, because we didn't know where the impact would fall at that point. I mean, because as they went through the test items, they realized that there definitely was rigor in this exam. And they didn't know if it was the way they were answering, was this going to put more students back into developmental education? But the point being, what Dr. Vail said, it is the first time that you will be able to look at a student holistically and not just based on a test score. And that's what's most important to remember.
Let me add, if the question was, do we think students may not even show up and take the exam because of the fear, I don't believe that will be the case, because they already have to take exams if they're not exempt. The same exemptions will stay in place. So I don't think that will be a concern. I think if there's any change in enrollments, it will be, how do we deal with the ABE? Right. And so we still have to work on that. But I think long term, the promise is that there will actually be some increases in enrollment, because we should be doing a better job of helping students progress forward rather than fall back. And one thing, it's not directly relevant here, but the schools we've been working with on developmental ed, we've been trying to emphasize this isn't about just being successful in the first course, college course. It's about finishing a certificate or a degree. This is a longer-term proposition. This is your overall success. And I think some students now, they'll have the diagnostics, and along with the holistic scoring, they'll have assistance that really matches their needs. You've heard the Commissioner's example of perhaps someone who graduated from high school as valedictorian 10 years ago. They come back, they may be identified as someone who just needs a little assistance, and they may be going directly into college courses but get some tutoring. It will vary. It will be a transition period. But the idea is to really match the treatment with the need of the student in a way that hasn't really been possible in the past.
The other part to this that Dr. Gardner didn't mention was, there is a pre-assessment or pre-assessment skills session that the institutions are required. So before students would come in, take the test, they didn't realize the importance of it. I personally even saw a very bright student just come in and answer anything they wanted to, and then when we said, you are going to need remediation, and they said, why? Well, because this test was of X value. Well, I didn't think this was important. Can I retake the test? So now the institutions will have to do a pre-session with students so that they understand the seriousness of it and the implications. And when they do take it, then they're more focused. So that's another plus to this exam.
There were some institutions, I understand, that felt they shouldn't in any way help prep a student for this exam. And our point isn't, this isn't a gotcha exam. This is an exam intended to help you and to help you succeed. And so it makes sense to have the pre-assessment so that they get ready. But the point is for them to eventually get that certificate or degree, not to send them on the street.
Thank you. Any other discussion questions?
Need
Motion.
to move adoption.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Madam
Appreciate
Chair,
it.
I would like to thank the College Board because we meet every Monday morning at 9 o'clock via the telephone and have been for I don't know how many weeks. And to Dr. Linda Hargrove, who's in the very back, from Susan Brown's staff, who before Dr. Grachek came on board, Dr. Hargrove literally has been in my division. Sometimes I think she's one of my staff members and has been invaluable to the work that's been going on. And of course to the DevEd ABE staff on my division.
And I should add, that this is a no-cost contract.
Yeah.
So
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item 5B is a presentation on the evaluation of Comprehensive Student Success Program by Texas State University San Marcos. Dr. Taylor Acey, Assistant Professor of Developmental Education, will present the current findings and preliminary results of this ongoing evaluation. Just remind you to push the button, make sure the red light is on, and pull it close to your. There you go. Great.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Matt Lashley. I'm a program director in the Division of P16 Initiatives. Just here to do a brief introduction to our presenters today. We are joined today by Dr. Taylor Acey and Dr. Terry Westbrook from Texas State University San Marcos, who will be presenting information about our first semester of evaluation in the Comprehensive Student Success Program. As a brief reminder, this is one component of our College Access Challenge Grant project, specifically focused on persistence and success in those courses where we see high rates of non-completion, typically freshman and sophomore level courses. In this presentation, we'll be addressing institutions including Austin Community College, Houston Community College, North Central Texas College, and the University of Houston downtown. Since this program's inception in the fall 2011 cohort, we've added 4 more institutions that are currently in operation, which we will hopefully in the future be telling you more about. But without further ado, I turn it over to Dr. Taylor Acey to share with us a little bit about the evaluation of this project.
Hello, board, chairperson. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I thank you all for your time. I'd also like to acknowledge to my colleagues, Dr. Paulson and Dr. Morales, who's the principal investigator on this project, and Dr. Paulson and I are co-investigators. The major, let's see if we can, how do you afford? Primary goal of this project is to improve students' persistence and success rates in high enrollment courses that traditionally have high rates of DFW. So a major goal is to reduce the letter grades of D, failure, and withdraw. And in the first semester of implementation of this program in fall 2009, the CSSP program served 1,595 students in intervention sections. And the ethnicity and race of students who were served are presented in this bar graph here. And when comparing these percentages to students who are in the control sections of these courses, we see very similar percentages, suggesting that the CSSP resources were fairly distributed across students' ethnicity and race. Each institution had flexibility in which courses they targeted in their program, and this table shows the different courses that were targeted. And the first 3 courses that are shown there are those which were most often targeted: mathematics, history, and English. Approximately 90% of the students who were served by CSSP interventions were served through one of these 3 courses. The institutions also had flexibility in what the specific components were that they would use in their interventions. And a major part of our site visits was to determine what it was specifically that institutions were implementing as part of their interventions. And these could fall into three general categories. One of them is learning support, which is focused on helping students become more effective and efficient learners. And an example of this is supplemental instruction, where one of their peers who took the course previously and succeeded in that course comes back and provides group tutoring sessions for students in that course. There's other examples there: required tutoring, learning strategies, instruction, and so forth. Another general theme was advising, counseling, and student monitoring and feedback systems. A prime example of this that was often implemented across institutions was early alert programs. Here's where instructors make alerts on students who are not performing well in their course, and the alert goes often to an advisor or counselor who then follows up with the student to help provide them with whatever assistance they need or direct them to other resources at the institution. Another theme was faculty and staff training, for example, instruction on how to use early alert systems, or different training on instructional strategies that could be used in large lecture classes. Course success was a primary focus in this grant, and course success for this presentation is defined as earning a letter grade of A, B, or C compared to D, F, or W. And when aggregating all of this information across all subject areas and across all institutions, there was no statistically significant difference in course success rates between the intervention and the control groups. The intervention group passed at 56%, whereas the control group passed at 55%. However, when you break the information down by institution, the picture becomes a little clearer. You see HTC is for Houston Community College. For that particular institution, there was a statistically significant difference between the intervention and control groups, where the intervention group had 66% compared to 52% in the control group. For North Central Texas College and the University of Houston downtown, there were no statistically significant differences in their course success rates. That's a good question.
With the other institution, then what's going on in one place that's not going on in the other place?
So that's a really good question, and there's the answer, I guess, is there's a lot of different reasons. Keep in mind, this is the first semester implementation and the data that we're looking at from fall 2011. For example, for North Central Texas College, they have had their eyes closely on these course success rates, and in the spring of 2012 they made a lot of changes in their program. One of their foci was on teaching students learning strategies, and their initial implementation was perhaps too broad. They tried to do too much in their intervention, and in the spring of 2012 they narrowed their focus to focus on specific learning strategies that were particularly relevant to the subject areas that they were targeting. For example, in math, they focused on test taking, whereas in history, they focused on other areas. So that's one example of how institutions have been using this data to transform their approaches. And NCTC has seen, I was at a site visit recently, just in February with them, and they showed some figures that were in a different direction than this, that were more positive. The other answer to that question is that when you look across the different subject areas, you might see differences that are statistically significant between the intervention and control groups, for example in math, but then not in English. So in the next couple of slides, I broke that down for you and highlighted two particularly promising interventions, one at HCC and one at UHD, that were implemented in the fall. So you might see some differences, like for UHD, for example, you see 56% in each area, but in their math course, they did have statistically significant changes, differences.
At UHD?
Yes, sir.
My numbers are, unless I'm on the wrong pages.
Oh, yeah, I'll show you in the next slides to come.
Okay.
That's overall. So it was important to also break this down by subject area. And I'd like to highlight two particular subject areas from two institutions. Houston Community College's English course, they had students sign a student expectation agreement that required them to use tutoring, counseling, and to attend class. They also had an online tutoring system where they had a tutor who was assigned specifically to those intervention sections, so they had greater access to tutoring. They also had a course website, which goes by here as Eagle Online, and on that website they were able to post different resources for students, and one section of that website there was a counselor's corner. It was a section dedicated for communications among the students with their counselors. They also implemented an early alert system and had faculty training. The University of Houston Downtown, their college algebra program used a different approach than HCC's, but also it was found to have success. They taught learning strategies to their students. For example, the math instructor trained students to use a Cornell note-taking method. They also extended class time by 30 minutes, and that allowed for more hands-on activity and active participation during class. And they had peer tutors that attended class as well, so during that extra 30 minutes, the peer tutors were able to interact more with students. And I'll show the course success rates in these two particular courses, and these are both statistically significant differences here. Houston Community College's English course has an 81% success rate compared to 53% in the control condition, whereas UHD's college algebra program has 63% compared to 54%. So these are two promising interventions and results here. But that being said, we can't fully attribute these differences to what they implemented in their interventions, because there's other possible explanations for why there might be these differences. For example, there's different instructors teaching courses, and students come in with different entering levels of ability. So in our future work, we're going to do more to try to rid out these alternative explanations so that we can be even more confident that it is these interventions specifically that are causing these differences. So our next steps are to continue data collection. Here we reported on fall 2011 data, and we recently obtained from the institution's fall 2010 and fall 2012 data. It'll be important to have the fall 2010 data because that will give us a baseline before they implemented their programs. We'll also continue to conduct finer-grained analyses and look at other variables, for example, usage of support services, change in their usage of learning and study strategies, and the effectiveness of faculty and staff training. And we have additional research questions that we added related to these other variables. And we'll also continue to analyze course success in 2012 and 2013 and to assess our project goals. I thank you for your time and allowing me to present on the Comprehensive Student Success Program. And if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is how much is the actual faculty? For instance, we have HCC English and we have UHD Algebra. I would like to have some idea of how much of the remediation is shifted from the, or how much of that responsibility is falling on the shoulders of the faculty versus these peer instructors. I mean, is it that faculty go in and teach the courses, and when they get in trouble, is the majority of the remediation shifted over to the peer instructors and tutors, or do the faculty, are they continually engaged outside of the classroom in terms of the remediation of the students that we've already identified is falling behind?
That's a really good question. The faculty and any other learning support specialists or advisors and counselors are all part of the program in this particular case. And throughout most of the CSSP institutions, the faculty at HCC are involved in they have faculty teams within their department area, for example, in English. And then they meet and work on new and innovative approaches for student success. For example, in HEC's English program, they did not implement this in the fall, but they were already working on developing a series of workshops and online modules to help support students' learning. And over just this last summer, they were continuing to develop these online modules and workshops. So they are heavily involved with creating new innovations, but the supplemental instructors and the counselors are also involved as part of the program. So and they also meet as a full team, as a CSSP team, across different subject areas and with the counselors and peer tutors. So it's a really collaborative effort, and it is comprehensive in that sense.
It's comprehensive in the sense that the lead instructors and faculty in terms of the algebra instructors are not only engaging the students in the classroom, but outside the classroom.
Correct. Yeah. The faculty are also involved in early alerts. They might make an early alert on a student, for example. And you mean outside of the classroom? Work in teams to come up with innovations outside the classroom?
What I'm talking about is going into the learning centers and sitting down with the students.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, they are started to develop workshops, but
my experience is that you walk the halls and you see the faculty with posted hours in terms of when they're supposed to be on campus and the hours in which they're supposed to be teaching. And then they got posted hours in which they're supposed to be in their office making themselves available to students. And when you knock on their doors, you hear there's no answers.
Well, they do have office hours.
I'm sure that's not every one of them, but I do know that there's a lot of them that I'm not real sure that understand they have some ownership and being an active part of engaging these students, particularly the ones that are not passing. You know, I've seen students wander off into the math departments begging for tutors, and the math department say, "We don't know where to send you." Do you have any tutors? And students even offering to pay for the tutors. And they say, well, we don't know where to send you. And then you go down to the learning lab, and you may have one or two peer tutors with 25 students gathered around them. And then you walk down the hall, and you've got 5 PhD mathematicians sitting in their lab, or sitting in their office, or not even in their office. Now, I know these are isolated incidents, but the truth of the matter is, we're talking about faculty workloads.
If I might add, I think what I'm hearing here is that this is an interim report, correct?
Correct.
And so I think you've raised a number of questions that we need to make sure we have better answers in the final report. And I think you've heard what they are, and we need to, our staff needs to take note of them, because they're it's not enough simply to say, this seemed to work here and this seemed to work there, and some of these, so it's interesting. UH Downtown had promising practices in algebra, but not in English, and so it's at this point there's a lot to sort out, I think, and I think we do need to know more in that final report for us to be able to really go forward with anything. Will you be able to do that?
Yes, sir.
Can you remind us how this is being supported? Is this a grant? Or
This is coming from the College Access Challenge grant.
Okay.
And so it's
a 3-year?
Yes, and it's a 3-year, and that's why this was only the preliminary beginning point, so we could bring you this data so you could see it.
Okay.
They're really in the second year, and then we'll be finishing off into this next year.
And the total amount for the grant for just the CSSP is how much money are we spending?
Current year is $1.5 million for 8 institutions. This only accounts for the 4 that started in the pilot year.
The very first year of the funding, and then we funded the second year.
That's the basic
and increased the count. What we also did under Dr. Kristen Kramer, Senior Director that's right behind the front table, the first year, I can't remember, you had, 17 applications?
We had 37.
37 applications, could not fund 37, and something like 17 very strong ones. And so she implemented a summer institute in order to keep this program going so that institutions would continue to look at their data to see where these high failure rate courses were and what could be done to help these students. Let her go ahead.
Well, let me add one thing real quickly, and then Kristen can go into that. There's also a challenge here to our staff, and I know Kristen knows this better than anyone because she's very much committed to this. Is there some things I see on this one page in terms of promising practices we've seen in other projects? And Kristen, in fact, did a summary about 2 years ago of the literature in terms of success, and some of these same things emerged. So part of our goal should be not just this project, but to bring together all of these and say, not just here, but in all these projects, here are things that clearly seem to work, and get that message out here. So this is one very good project, I think, but we're beginning to see sort of this concurrence of practices and need to pull those together and move forward to make sure they're better known and not just project after project.
I can't imagine that Texas is the first place that they've ever tried to improve pass rates for students. So it appears to me that really bringing in the research, having a real benchmark, and then just moving forward, rather than just having experiments, random experiments, whoever wants to try this or try this. I think that's maybe what we're looking for, is something that would be a little bit more concrete. And so now you're finished with 1 year. So have you selected the techniques you want to use for year 2 and 3, and then see if we can move those forward and improve all the outcomes, versus just maybe a shotgun effect of you're going to use this and you're going to use this, and we'll still have this control group.
Generally speaking, this project, unlike some of the other ones we've done, this one was really the institutions got to design how they wanted to address their high failure or high withdrawal courses, and help students see higher success rates in those courses. Some of that is because each institution is very different, has different sorts of populations, although we made recommendations regarding certain common practices we wanted to see. And in large part, that was around having high expectations of your students and your faculty and staff. And so you would see things around required tutoring or required training, where everyone needs to show up to do the job at hand. Each institution in each subject area is refining their interventions over the 3-year period. So the data you've seen is semester one semester. The fact that we have any kind of positive impact in one semester is actually incredibly heartening. Typically, you don't see much happen after one semester. So we're finishing up year 2. Data always drags behind where we are in the programming, unfortunately. But each institution and program is refining what they're bringing to the students and to the faculty. So we're hoping to see much better and clearer results as we move forward. And the institutions will have a better sense of what's working and what's not. So I think our intention, at least at the end of these several years of of work is to be able to say, here are particular practices that have been perfected, or maybe that's a strong word, improved, and that practice will become part of the institutional practice. Because also one of the things we've been doing is building in sustainability over time. So we roll back sometimes the amount of money or expect more students to be served with the same amount of grant funds. So we're looking to expand practices out into the institution so that it doesn't just stay localized with one or two instructors. I hope that goes some step towards answering your questions.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, could I make one final statement? The final analysis, what we're looking for is improve retention. We want that student to get through that first year and then be academically qualified to come back the second year. We don't want them on academic probation and then have to cut back the number of hour courses that they're approved to take, because that prolongs the length of their graduation time. So, you know, what's going in the final analysis is, in my mind, which is going to ultimately determine how effective what we're doing and what we're learning during this process, is how well are we doing in retaining students, and two, how is this going to ultimately be reflected on our graduation rates? Because that's what we're ultimately trying to improve.
One thing I would like to add is, and this may be a somewhat controversial statement, but so forgive me, that a lot of this work is really about changing a culture on a campus.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where our hope lies, and where I think the people who are working very diligently on these efforts. And so as more and more people get involved, we see that an institution has a different sort of perspective towards its students and towards its faculty and the expectations of what students can do. And you have to remember, too, that specifically both HCC and U of H downtown come to mind, that their student populations in these courses often had failure rates at sometimes 60 and 70%. I mean, that's astounding. Or students who would come in and with really high withdrawal rates, who would repeat the course and withdraw before the course was completed, sometimes 3 and 4 times. So these were, in some sense, very desperate situations. And the fact that we're seeing progress, I think, is quite hopeful.
I agree with that. But the disheartening thing is that we repeatedly letting these students back into these courses with little or no hope of them being successful, taking their money, running up their student debt, and then flunking them out after this first or second year, and they go out on the streets, and they're no better off than what they were when they started. So I agree with you that to see any kind of improvement after the first year is certainly encouraging. And I agree with you that the most important statement that you've made that I agree with is that, you know, we are beginning to address the culture of these institutions, because both of these two institutions are primarily teaching institutions. They have no excuse for not teaching. They don't have a major research component. I mean, they're there to teach. And when you hire a faculty member to teach, that's what they're hired to, and that's what they're paid for, is to teach. And so part of the cultural problem that I've seen just personally is that a lot of them think their job is to go into the classroom, present the material, and then walk back into their offices and put in their hours. And if you've got a certain number of students struggling, that's somebody else's responsibility to fix. So I want to see more and more of the people that have a stake in these students' success, including faculty, administration, peer tutors, the departments, all engage collectively, working side by side to ensure these students have every opportunity to succeed. And if they're not, then quit taking their money and running up their debt and then flunking them out.
We appreciate you coming today, and this was just a report. There's no action required, so thank you. We'll move on to item 5C, consideration of a recommendation relating to the approval of amendments to reallocate Complete College America funding.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, the purpose of this item is to update you on our CCA, the College Access, the Complete College America program that we implemented called FOCUS. And FOCUS translates into Fundamentals of Conceptual Understanding and Success, which is really our efforts in math and developmental education. It is a co-requisite model that allows a student to complete developmental math paired with college algebra or elementary statistics in one semester. The CCA award was originally provided by Closing the Gaps Committee in September of 2011. The program launched in the spring of 2012, and since then we have found success with 7 institutions participating in the program, starting in spring of 12 to spring of 13. That's community colleges, affecting 78 faculty members who received extensive pedagogical training on this model, with 698 students enrolling in the program and 585 students persisting to complete. Of those persisting, 73% of those students earned a C or better in college algebra. In spite of the success, the rigor of the program prevented institutions from serving the number of students projected in the original proposal. Therefore, this resulted in fewer grant funds being awarded to the participating community colleges because they had to use the funds as they originally had applied for. In light of the availability of the additional funds, the staff had a long conference call with the Complete College America director who oversees our project, and we requested a no-cost extension to take us through October 31st of 13, which would be the fall of this year. And as part of that no-cost extension and the reallocation of funds, which is listed in your blue page, we are requesting permission, and requested of them as well, to provide funding to include universities in this same model, because there are universities that approached us that wanted to be a part of the program. So 5 universities have come to the table to participate in the FOCUS program starting it this summer. In addition, we will have to amend our contract with evaluation because we've got to evaluate these new universities that come into the process. And so we are seeking permission to reallocate those funds to bring in the universities into a program for the no-cost extension, for the evaluation that has to be done. And as previously stated, the CCA program did approve that no-cost extension that we are now bringing to you with the reassignment of the funds, and we ask for your approval.
Tell me about the community college, decreasing them $316,000. That was just because the guesstimate how much you were going to have to use on the community colleges.
And there's a process that students go through in the and coming into this program. You just don't sign up to take it.
Okay.
Because it is going to involve, as I indicated, it's a paired course. You're not only taking a support course, you're actually taking the content course. So you're taking 2 connected to 1. So the number of students who had to go through an interview process, so they understood what they were coming into. Some students did not want to opt into that scenario, so the number of students originally anticipated was not it. Keep also in mind that the community colleges also implemented Mathways. I think you've heard about that program in some of your committee and board meetings. And so some of the colleges opted to stay with the Mathway program, so we lost some of the colleges. But that's not a negative because we're still serving students at both ends.
But it allowed you to use some money then for the universities.
That's right. And the universities came and said, why didn't you come to us? Why are we not a part of this? Because there are universities that are offering remedial mathematics, the lower level math, and there are students that are on the cusp, which is what we talked about earlier. Students that really, with some marginal help, could pop right into that credit-bearing course and be successful. And this program and the data already shows, with the intensive training to faculty, with that working with the student on both sides, not only in the course, but actually in the support system, it is successful. So we're asking for those reallocation of funds for us to proceed in that no-cost extension.
Questions, discussion?
So move.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. 5C, 5D, and 5E are on consent calendar. 5F is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to guidelines for the 2013 Texas Higher Education Star Award. Mary Smith, Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Academic Planning and Policy, will review this for us. Thank you. Hi, Mary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Other than the timeline for the 2013 Texas Higher Education Star Awards, we don't actually recommend any changes for the 2013 Star Awards. So I'll just go over what we changed last year very briefly. We did change the data requirement from 2 to 3 years. We recommend continuing that into 2013. And again, we are only suggesting that those categories that are specifically related to closing the gaps be retained. There was a higher scoring rate given last year to those proposals that demonstrated a high level of cost efficiency so that they could be replicated. And then finally, the individual category was eliminated last year just simply because it's so difficult to compare individual contributions to program level contributions. So the main focal point is what the date of the Star Awards will probably be, and we're looking at October 3rd and 4th for our conference this year, depending on legislation that's currently at the state legislature, specifically with respect to regents training. We're trying to debate which of those dates would be the better one for the training versus the conference.
Any
And I'm
questions or
happy to answer
discussion?
any questions.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Mary. Item 5G is on the consent calendar. 5H is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from South Texas College to create a Bachelor of Applied Science and Organizational Leadership degree. Stacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed degree program requested by South Texas College is part of the coordinating board-led Texas Affordable Baccalaureate project funded through an EDUCAUSE Next Generation Learning Challenges grant. The proposed program would allow students to move through based on completion of successfully fulfilling competencies. Students would progress at their own pace, which could shorten the time to complete the degree program. The proposed program would prepare graduates to enter management positions in business, government, nonprofit organizations, and educational settings. This would be the fourth baccalaureate degree program authorized for South Texas College. I do need to point out that there is an error in the calculation of the revenue costs. The estimated amount should be $18.6 million rather than $18.4 million. The startup costs on the program are high, as it involves the creation of an entirely new curriculum and instruction model. However, as you can see, once the program reaches scale, those startup costs are completely recouped, and the program not only becomes self-sustaining, but generates revenue. Staff recommendation is for approval, and we do have representatives from South Texas College here. Dr. Ali Ismaili, Dean for Bachelor Programs in University Relations, and Mario Reyna, Dean of Business and Technology, are here from South Texas College if you have questions. Additionally, Dr. Van Davis is also available if you have specific questions about the coordinating board role in the Texas Affordable Baccalaureate Project.
Discussion.
So this degree is not offered by any of our institutions at this time?
Not this specific degree. There are some that are comparable. I believe those are shown on the page 3.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any comparable degrees located in this geographical region?
No, sir.
Okay. And this is a community college, once again, asking for a right to offer a baccalaureate degree.
That is correct.
Okay. Is there some way that we can assess how well they're doing in their core mission in terms of what we generally consider that being of community colleges? In other words, what percentage of the students are graduating with associate degrees? What percentage of their students that are completing that associate degree within 60 hours versus 85 and 90 hours? And all the things that we think that encompass an outstanding community college. Is there any way that we can assess just how well they're performing their core mission before we expand their mission into baccalaureate degrees?
Well, they do have 3 existing baccalaureate degrees, and I believe they have the authority to offer up to 5.
Yeah.
But we do have folks here from South Texas College who may be able to address the specific proposal.
Yeah, let me say in general, all the types of data you requested is actually available in our accountability system, and while it isn't brought forward specifically here, it can be provided to you.
But that we can also find that in the Almanac.
Absolutely.
Correct. Not quite as extensively, but the basics are all there, yes, sir.
Van, would you be able to comment on I don't know who's the most knowledgeable in terms of what I'm trying to get at, and what I'm concerned about is as we allow certain institutions to expand, particularly when they're community colleges, into the role of providing baccalaureate degrees. Is there a strong rationale for that? Number one, is there a need that's not being fulfilled by a 4-year institution in that geographical area? And two, before I'm likely to go ahead and continually wanting to expand their upward mobility into baccalaureate degrees, I want to see if their focus is still on their core mission, and that's what we consider important and vital in the community college mission.
Certainly, Dr.
And I don't know who can give me a good sound answer. I guess I can go back and look at the Almanac and come back, but I didn't do that before the meeting. But I can go back and look and see how well this institution is performing with its sister institutions in terms of across the board comparisons. I would like to see and make sure that they're doing an outstanding job or a good job in what their core mission is, and if they are, then that's certainly a foundation which they can build and continually grow other programs when we see a viable need.
Well, could I give a slight pre-statement before we get into the data? It's one thing that I just want to remind everyone that's a little different here is actually a new model is being developed, which we think has potential to be much more efficient for students to address through competency-based education, in some cases through demonstration alone, in some cases with courses and instruction necessary, but truly a competency-based program that could, for many students, help accelerate their progress in a sense that we don't really have at any other institution in the state. And so South Texas and Commerce have come together here in a very creative way and have been working very hard to find ways to go beyond what they're already doing. And so I think everything you say is important, and we need to be sure that the school is performing as they should be, and I think you'll hear about that in a moment. But this is a model that hopefully will take them beyond their current performance. And if so, there's a potential of taking much of what they've done here and applying it to other institutions. For example, where they create competency-based exams, that we want those to be available to other institutions to use as well. So I just want to make that as a, unlike what we heard earlier, where some of these things were already known, this is a little bit new, but you want good people to be the ones going into it.
Yeah, I like the fact that y'all are doing some things that are innovative and creative. I'm all for the competency-based assessments and being more efficient and educating students and getting them through the process faster. I think that's y'all should be applauded for that. Y'all are thinking outside the box. That's wonderful. But I don't want, we still need to make sure that the vital mission of community colleges are not a vacuum done eventually develop, where those vital needs of the state of Texas are not being emphasized, and we all want to eventually move up to be all four-year institutions. Now, I realize we're a long ways from that, but y'all are kind of a model, and you've certainly done very well up to this point. But each time y'all come back and ask for this, I understand you do real well in these baccalaureate programs, and you've got a real good track record of taking on that additional responsibility and performing real well. But I want to make sure it's not at the expense of developmental education, which is a primary mission of community colleges. So one of the questions I'd like to ask is, are we still at your institution focusing on a strong developmental education program? Are we still, or is that being sacrificed for a different direction, which is traditionally not always been in the domain of community colleges? I want to see a strong, I would personally like to see y'all maintain a strong community college-based mission, and if you can add the additional responsibility at a level of excellence, then I'm all for it.
Well, I'll let these gentlemen respond to part of your concerns, Dr. Goldman, but I've pulled up from the almanac the 3-year graduation rates for full-time students, 4-year and 6-year rates for both full-time and part-time students. So I want to tell you how they're doing with those metrics and what the state standard is. And also to add to what Dr. Gardner said, preface this by saying that we actually approached South Texas College and asked them to work with us and Texas A&M University Commerce on this project because in discussions that we had with the commissioner, the feeling was that as we moved into trying to work on competency-based affordable baccalaureate degrees, we wanted to have one of the 3 community college baccalaureate granting institutions involved in the project, and it was very clear to us that South Texas College has had extraordinary success with those programs. In terms of how they're doing with their associate degree programs, and this is the data from the 2012 almanac, the 3-year graduation rate for full-time students is 18.7%. That's higher than the state average. State average is 13.8%. The 3-year graduation rate for part-time students is 10.1%. That's also higher than the state average at 8.9%. The 4-year graduation rate for full-time students is 24.9%, which is higher than the state average at 19.8%. The 4-year part-time graduation rate is 15.3%, which is also higher than the state average, which is 13.1%. The 6-year full-time graduation rate is 30.6%, which is also higher than the state average, which is 29.3%. And then the 6-year part-time graduation rate, and this is just associate degree programs, is 20.5%, which is a little lower than the state average at 23.8%. And I'll let these 2 gentlemen address the concerns about what they're doing with developmental education and how they're meeting both the dual credit needs of the community as well as the developmental education and the workforce needs of the community.
That's what I want to hear.
Yes. Madam Chair, I just wanted to quickly address a couple of the issues that Dr. Golden raised and quickly refresh you on what the law is in this area. That the 3 community colleges that have been afforded the opportunity to offer baccalaureate degrees may each offer up to 5 degree programs, and that in determining, and Dr. Golden mentioned several of these factors, in determining what baccalaureate degree programs are to be offered, the coordinating board is tasked with considering, 1, the need for the degree programs in the region served, 2, how those degree programs would complement the other programs and course offerings of the community college, 3, whether those degree programs would unnecessarily duplicate the degree programs offered by other IHEs, and finally, the ability of the community college to support the program and the adequacy of the college's facilities, faculty, administration, libraries, and other resources. That was the extent of my comment.
About developmental education, by the way, my name is Ali Ismaili. I'm the Dean of Bachelor's Program, Math and Science and Developmental Studies at the South Texas College. Since 2007, which we had almost close to 56% of our students in developmental education, we have come up with a lot of initiative to accelerate developmental students out of developmental education. Currently, we have 17% of our students coming from high school end up in developmental. That's a great achievement for us. And that, we can see the impact of that in our graduation. And our graduation has increased as the students are moving up to their majors and moving out of the developmental education. So we have very good success with developmental education. As a matter of fact, with this new initiative that is coming, a new TSI assessment, we are right now preparing for fall 2013, and we are practically working for implementation of this TSI assessment and coming up with initiatives to continue that acceleration out of developmental education. And going back to this bachelor's degree, Associate of Applied Science degrees, upon their transfer to university, they will lose 45 credit hours of their 60 credit hours. This degree is for those students that have Associate of Applied Science, which if they transfer to university, they will lose 45 credit hours. And by accommodating this type of students, and we have a record right now that by this fall, we are graduating close to 600 students since 2005. Quite a few of these students, they already received their master's degree. These students, they had no plan to go beyond Associate of Applied Science. Just imagine the magnitude of the work that is taking place and your approval for this program, the impact that it will have on a community and businesses in our region. We have a clear and successful track in developmental education, in associate degree, which Mr. Reyna will talk about it, and in our bachelor degree. As a matter of fact, we strengthen our mission by showing students that even though you are in Associate of Applied Science, you can be successful in a bachelor's program, and you can go beyond that bachelor's program. And we can, as a matter of fact, when I was out to grab a bottle of water, I said, we should showcase our college here at the coordinating board. We do a lot of successful initiatives at our college. And so I'm going to talk to Dr. Reed to come here and showcase South Texas College. And I think we deserve to sort of get credit for all these good things that we do at South Texas College. In an area that not too long ago, it had 44% unemployment in Starr County and about 22% unemployment in Hidalgo County. Now, before recession, we had 7.5% unemployment in Hidalgo County and about 12%, from 44 to 12% unemployment in Starr County. And we owe that to your support for higher education in that region. And we work very hard to be sure that we deliver that message of Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to our region.
Can you tell us what your other bachelor programs are?
The first one was Technology Management.
Okay.
Bachelor of Applied Technology and Technology Management. Second one was the Bachelor of Applied Technology in Computer and Information Technologies. And the third one that is coming at the right time with all this medical school in our region is Medical and Health Services Management. We are graduating the first cohort of 32 students from that program. Right. And they have a almost 90% of a chance to get a job. Our placement for our bachelor's degrees is very high. Our graduation is 86%. Never heard of any bachelor's degree with 86%.
Are you holding a spot for nursing?
Our neighboring institution, our sister institution, UT Pan American, is offering that degree. So therefore we are...
Mr. Hahn has a question.
Sure.
I'm pretty impressed. Actually, I'm really impressed. But what would you estimate this degree is going to cost a student?
I let Van to talk about that.
Well, if you notice, we're using a very different tuition and fee model. It's not a semester tuition and fee model. It's a subscription-based model. What we're looking at are running 6-7-week terms over the course of a year. Students would be enrolled full-time. They would be enrolled year-round. Because it's a competency-based model for the first 90 semester credit hours, that's very different than what most folks are used to, and that means that it is in part self-paced. And so to some extent what the cost for the student overall will be based upon how quickly the student progresses through the model and through the coursework. We believe that a student who comes in with no credit and unable to show competency mastery in any area would be able to finish in 3 years, probably somewhere between $14,000 and $17,000. The subscription that we're looking at, the flat tuition and fee rate that we're aiming for, is $650 per term, which would be inclusive of all learning materials as well.
That's for the 7-week period.
That's correct. For a student who comes in with an associate's degree in hand, or comes in able to show considerable mastery of material and can accelerate through, we think they can finish in easily 18 months and probably somewhere around $6,000 or $7,000. So it has the ability to be significant cost savings for the students who will be the right fit for this program. Most of the students coming into the program we anticipate will probably be returning adults. One of the reasons why we chose A&M Commerce and asked them to partner with us is because they're a military serving institution. They have good relationships with military and veteran affairs. We think that that's probably going to be one of the target groups. As Dr. Ismaili spoke of, students who have the Applied Associates in Sciences, which usually is not a transferable degree. It oftentimes is a terminal degree, that this will also be a very good fit for them, as well as adults who have accumulated some college credit and have not completed their degrees. We think that we may very well see some traditional age students interested in this program, although that's not the primary audience. And our upper division faculty team have been developing the admission criteria for that group of students as well. Certainly students, though, that have graduated with early college high school programs may very well be interested in this type of self-paced degree. I think also, although this was not a group we had originally given much thought to, but it's become clear that it may very well be a group. Students who, for some reason, largely maybe because of physical disabilities and accessibility to being able to get to college campuses in their area, may also be very interested in this program as well. So if you notice, and we just have in the blue pages here on page 3 of the item, the numbers, the enrollment projections for South Texas College. You'll notice those enrollment projections are aggressive. The enrollment projections for the entire program are even, when we add in A&M Commerce's projections, are even more aggressive. We believe we're going to start with about 215 students the first year between the two schools, and we're going to double enrollment, at least double enrollment every year after that, projecting an 80% retention rate and graduation rate. That retention and graduation rate was built, those projections are built on how both schools are already doing with their applied baccalaureate programs. We've had some external validation of that. We're working with Pearson right now to put together a scope of work and execute a contract to help map the competencies that the faculty have developed to content material, and they would partner with the schools for the next 5 years in offering that.
So is this, I mean, is it the equivalent of like a management degree?
It is. It's a degree that is meant to prepare students to move into mid-level management careers. The upper division curriculum includes ethics. It includes applied mathematics. It includes human resources. It includes organizational management. There's considerable curriculum on the upper division side in leadership, talking both about leadership styles but also the application of leadership principles in management. There's also a very strong applied perspective to the upper division coursework, where students will actually be working through a number of problems in each course cluster on the upper division side, which will lead to problems in the next cluster, so that they're building their knowledge base through application. They'll culminate with a capstone portfolio, e-portfolio, that will be actually evaluated by a team of faculty and area business leaders. We're also developing the upper division curriculum in cooperation with representatives from the business communities from each of the institutions to make sure that those sorts of leadership skills, as well as critical thinking, quantitative literacy, communication skills, diversity skills, are built into the curriculum so that it is meeting the needs that these communities are identifying, that the business leaders in these communities are identifying as necessary for a successful job applicant and a successful employee at the supervision side.
Okay, so you're proposing a bachelor's degree that's $14,000 to $16,000 a year.
Yes, sir.
Allows students that have an associate's degree in applied sciences or competency-based education.
Yes, sir.
You're growing the workforce significantly.
Yes, sir.
How can you not do this deal?
Well, that's sort of what we think. And that's what EDUCAUSE and the Gates Foundation thinks.
So I need a motion.
I'd like to make just a couple of comments real briefly. I've got a reputation on this board of asking a lot of questions, and I don't know how else to learn other than to ask. And I'm certainly glad that I began to ask questions here because, I was a little skeptical when you guys stepped up to the table there. And, everything I'm hearing is great. I love this innovative approach. I love this creative approach of doing things better, more cost effectively, and I'm going to be watching this. You guys don't need to fail. You guys you've got to come through for us because this is something that we could use in other parts of the state, and I guess the ultimate measure in terms of how well you do is how well your graduates will perform out in the workforce. And I guess only time will tell, but from what you're telling me, they're already doing a good job. So I'm glad I spoke up and asked, and I'm glad you gave me the answers you did because keep it up.
In the near future, we're going to bring one of our graduates that has doctorate degree to speak to these degrees pretty soon.
Since this is a disruptive degree, in a sense, it's important that you ask these types of questions because we hope that they perform at such a high level that, and because questions are asked, that not only will they be producing graduates at a lower cost, but people will be convinced of the quality and it's a good approach. So we need to ask those questions as we go forward, so we appreciate those.
So the question I have, it looks like a lot of this is self-paced and online learning. If I lived in Beaumont or Austin, how often would I have to, and for what period of time would I have to visit the actual facility? Could I complete this whole thing online from a distance, or would I actually have to have a residence period where I would be on campus?
A&M Commerce will be offering first of all, the first 90 semester credit hours, the lower division coursework, which encompasses a competency-based gen ed curriculum, will be entirely online by both institutions. Okay. Both institutions are developing the curriculum together and will be offering identical curriculum. Initially, the upper division coursework will be offered online as accelerated cohort-based coursework from A&M Commerce. South Texas College is going to offer it initially as hybrid coursework, but they will be moving towards building it out as online as well. So students will have an option, at least initially, of either doing online or having some hybrid. Eventually, though, both institutions will offer it online.
So once it gets up and running, it could be anywhere in the state, literally anywhere in the world.
Yes, sir. And that's one reason why we're able to have such aggressive growth numbers.
I'm going to move approval.
I'm going to second it wholeheartedly.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Can I
Glad
say,
you drove up.
I want to say one other thing. I can't help this. This is one of the most impressive presentations that I've heard in 3 years. I mean, in terms of being innovative and creative and thinking outside the box, maybe bringing up and reinventing how we do things that's more cost effective and efficient and reaching more students. This,
Dr. Goldman,
you guys are barking up the right tree here.
My name is Mario Reina. I'm the Dean for Business and Technology. This coming May, in a couple of weeks, a few weeks from now, we will graduate over 4,000 students. The numbers, the percentages don't tell the whole story. We're going to rent what we call the State Farm Arena. The State Farm Arena seats 7,500 people. We're going to have 5 ceremonies at the State Farm Arena. We are graduating so many people, some of them not within the specified range that we talked about here, but nonetheless they're graduating. A year ago or so, the Texas Business Association recognized us as being the best institution in Texas in the very large category, because we are a very large institution. So they called us to come to Austin to pick up an award, because they thought, based on the numbers, that we are the best in Texas. And we are.
Congratulations.
That's
great.
Dr. Golden, we've had a number of requests to speak about this program. Dr. Ismaili and his team did a presentation at the Community College Baccalaureate Association meeting last month. They also did a presentation at the League of Innovations meeting. I was on a panel at South by Southwest EDU. I've also spoken at EDUCAUSE, which is the largest educational technology conference in the nation, about this project, as well as the College Board's Southwest Regional meeting. And we'll be doing presentation at NISOD as well. So there is a great deal of national interest in this project as well. We are being watched by the nation. At our curriculum meetings last week, we had a representative from the United States Department of Education there who requested to come down when she heard what we were doing, because she was that interested in seeing what we were doing. So there are a lot of eyes on us, and we will not fail.
I've got one last thing to say. Go, go, go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 5I is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to an issuance of requests for applications and awarding of grants for the Texas Emergency and Trauma Care Education Partnership Program. Did this get funded? Was it in the budget? I have a feeling.
We
So
assume
explain.
that it is going to be funded. It is one of those unique programs that is funded. The money actually goes to the Department of State Health Services, and then through an interagency agreement, it is transferred to us.
Okay.
So it is unique in that way. And the request will authorize the posting of the request for application and the issuance of grants. And the program actually supports the development of new emergency and trauma physician residency positions and master's level nursing programs with a focus on emergency and trauma care. In your white pages, you can see that in 2012 and 13, awards were made to 13 residency programs to support the cost of adding a new resident to emergency medicine and critical surgical care programs. Additionally, 3 master's level nursing programs were supported and offered students additional certification and training in trauma and critical care. The grants help support the training of an additional 56 residents and fellows and 159 master's prepared nurses. Again, we think the funding is going to be coming forward, and we anticipate that it'll be somewhere around that $4.5 million level. And we do want to go ahead and post so that we can prepare for that in the fall.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Stacy. Item 5J is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to issuance of a request for applications and awarding of grants for the Norman Hackerman Advanced Research Program 2013 competition. Stacy.
Thank you. This request will in addition authorize the posting of a request for application and make awards for the program. The Norman Hackerman Advanced Research Program, or NHARP as we call it, received $1 million in 2011, which allowed the program to make 12 awards of $80,000, and then 5 additional awards were made from unexpended funds that were returned to the coordinating board from past competitions. We anticipate a similar level of funding for this program, with the likelihood, the possibility, we think that the program may get $2 million in funding. And if funding remains in that range, we'll continue to support basic research grants that are really focused on early career scientists. So project investigators. And one of the unique parts about this program is that each of the project is required to support undergraduate training in basic research. So this is one of the few, or perhaps only, targeted programs that focuses on basic research efforts.
And the money actually comes from where?
It is general revenue funds.
Oh.
Our bill pattern at this point.
Questions? Discussion?
Move authorization.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you. Items K and L are on the consent calendar. That brings us to
Move adjournment.
adjournment.
So, second.
All in favor say aye. Motion is approved. Thank you very much.